So how has the two-state solution evolved? Relations between Israel and its neighbours have been tense ever since Israel declared its independence in 1948. During the Six-Day War in 1967, Israel made huge territorial gains. It seized both the West Bank and Gaza. A return to 1967 borders would mean Israel would have to give up this land, although of course we're talking about negotiations based on those borders with territorial swaps. Israel has since built settlements on much of that territory, which is illegal under international law. About 300,000 Israelis live outside those 1967 borders. Mark Regev is the spokesperson for the Israeli Prime Minister Binyamin Netanyahu. He joins us now in the studio, but frankly it's been a pretty good trip. President Obama has pretty much phrased the entire Israeli-Palestinian conflict in ways that Prime Minister Netanyahu would. President Obama didn't even mention 67 borders today. Do you think you've got the US administration pretty much where you want it?
I think there's a common bond that unites the United States and Israel. Desire to see peace and security and stability, and how to move forward on that. It's very important. What we spoke about today is clear. One example, the Palestinians want to bring Hamas into the government. Hamas says no to peace, no to reconciliation. They say yes to bin Laden. You heard it yourself 2 weeks ago. They say yes to extremism. They're not a partner in peace.
They say yes to the de facto recognition of the 67 borders.
I don't think they actually say that, to be fair. They say if Israel relinquishes territory to Hamas, they'll be kind enough to attack us from that territory.
What is the 67 borders business about? What exactly did you think was the basis of these peace negotiations anyway? Certainly the rest of the world and international law assumed it was the 67 borders.
On the contrary, if you look at the relevant UN resolution, which is UN Resolution 242, going back to 1967, it talks about making peace and secure borders. And
it was always inadmissibility of land, of the acquisition of territory by war,
but read the whole resolution.
The need to work for a just and lasting peace.
Yes,
the withdrawal of Israeli armed forces from territories occupied in the
recent conflict. And doesn't say all the territories. It specifically doesn't say all the territories.
But clearly we're talking about land swaps. I mean, even the Palestinians, Erekat has said, well, yeah, we in the end we'll probably give up the settlements. Isn't this all a big smokescreen? Because you basically got everything you wanted, which was the rejection of Palestinian statehood at the UN General Assembly at a time of the Arab uprising with the support of the world and the United States. You don't have that spectre haunting you in the future anytime soon.
Look, Israel is ready for peace, for real peace, for two states living side by side, a Jewish state and a Palestinian state. The trouble has been the failure of the Palestinian leadership to negotiate. And now that they've formed this alliance, this pact with Hamas, which is the most violent enemy of peace, and I think the Palestinians have to make a decision. Are they with Hamas and extremism, or are they for peace and reconciliation?
But before you said there was no partner for peace because they weren't. There was no unified Palestinian.
No one ever said that. I know they say that, but no one ever said that. In fact, I was on your show, I think, a few months ago, and I said specifically, Israel wants to negotiate. We never said what you've accused us of saying.
Was the real touchstone, perhaps, of conflicts? I mean, we're all trying to find out what exactly has made the Israeli Prime Minister so angry. Might it have been the implications for a future Israeli presence in the Jordan Valley? Because that's the only thing where we thought perhaps President Obama was breaking new ground.
Look, what has been agreed is that a future Palestinian state has to be demilitarized. We don't want a situation like when we pulled out of Gaza, that we pull out and then suddenly you have terrorists moving in, shooting rockets at Israeli civilians. We don't want to see a repeat of that on the West Bank. And so the idea is, how do you maintain effective demilitarization of a future Palestinian state? And the idea that we have, which I think is the only workable idea at this stage, is to have an Israeli military presence on the eastern border of a Palestinian state.
Right, that's a sovereign, viable state, isn't it?
I'm sorry, there are many examples of sovereign states around the planet, along the globe, where you have foreign forces on their border. You want me to give a few examples? Japan, is that a sovereign state? Is South Korea a sovereign state? Is Germany a sovereign state? In other words, to say a priori, up front, that having foreign forces on your soil is somehow limiting your sovereignty, I think that's actually not correct.
As it is insisting on that recognition a priori before, that there should be some kind of Israeli force.
Well, obviously the security issue has to be negotiated, but as my Prime Minister has said, what we have to find is the balance between the Palestinians' legitimate desire for independence and sovereignty and our desire for security.
It's a dangerous game there. If even the idea of 67 borders being a basis of negotiations with land swaps is too much, especially in the context of the Arab Spring, especially in the context of a sovereignty declaration in September, there will be no hiding behind an endless peace process. Ehud Barak's great nightmare of you becoming the new South Africa, a pariah state with an international divestment and sanctions movement with peaceful uprisings on your borders is going to happen, isn't it? How come you're so confident? How is Netanyahu so confident?
First of all, let's be clear here. Israel has nothing to fear from the Arab Spring. If there is democracy amongst our neighbors, that gives a real chance for peace between peoples instead of peace between leaderships. But I'd ask you, what has the Palestinian reaction been to the Arab Spring? Have they embraced the ideas of democracy and freedom and human rights?
Last Sunday it seemed
No, on the contrary, they have formed an alliance with one of the most authoritarian and extreme groups, Hamas. How does Hamas run Gaza, sir? Hamas has destroyed all political opposition. They've closed down all opposition media. They arrest bloggers in the middle of the night. They oppress women violently. They kill gay people. This is the Palestinian answer to the Arab Spring.
It's not a binary thing. I think Hamas and Fatah have a great deal to worry about by the Arab Spring as well, but so is Israel.
I disagree. I think we have very little to fear from democracy in the Arab world and everything to gain.
Mark Regev, as ever, thank you.
My pleasure.